Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take those news stories you've been hearing about, pile up all the research,
Yeah.
and really get into what's going on.
Right.
You shared a story about ASAP Rocky's felony assault case,
Yeah.
and it's definitely one with layers.
For sure.
I mean, we're talking about an internationally known artist, his former friend,
Right.
and this whole thing ending up in court.
Absolutely.
It's like a real-life rap beef gone legal.
It really is. And you know what's so fascinating about this one is how much this case relies on just differing accounts of what happened
Right.
and how that plays into the legal system.
Yeah.
Like you've got this incident back in 2021 outside a Hollywood hotel.
Uh-huh.
ASAP Rocky and ASAP Relly,
Ugh.
they're former friends from the ASAP mob. They get into it.
Wait, hold it for a second.
Yeah.
For those listening who might not be super deep into the hip-hop scene,
Sure.
can you give us a little more context on the ASA mob?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
So the ASAP mob is this hip-hop collective, kind of like a crew from Harlem, New York.
Yeah.
They've got rappers, producers, fashion designers. It's a whole movement.
Okay.
Rocky and Relly, they came up together in that scene.
Okay, so there's history there.
Absolutely.
It's not just some random beef.
Exactly, yeah.
So back to this altercation in Hollywood. What exactly went down?
Well, that's where the differing accounts come in.
Okay.
You've got Relly claiming Rocky fired a gun at him, even grazing his knuckles.
Wow.
Then you have ASAP 12, another person in their circle, saying Rocky only fired a blank firing starter pistol
Oh, okay.
as a warning because Relly was actually the one being aggressive.
Oh, wow.
Imagine being the jury trying to sort through that.
Whoa, a blank firing starter pistol?
Yeah.
That adds another layer to this?
Right.
Can we break that down a bit?
Sure.
Not everyone might know what those are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Think of it like this. You've seen those starting pistols they use in track races. They're loud, but they don't actually fire a projectile.
Okay.
They just make a bang and a flash.
Right.
Some people use them for signaling,
Mm-hmm.
some for training, even in film for special effects.
Interesting.
Rocky's defense is saying that's all he had and that it was a warning shot because Relly was the aggressor.
But wouldn't there be evidence of that?
Right.
Like, wouldn't the police find something at the scene?
Well, that's where it gets even more complicated.
Okay.
No weapon was recovered, and no ammunition was found at the scene either. Now, Relly did turn in shell casings, which adds to the confusion.
Right.
You have to ask, where did those casings come from if there wasn't any ammo found at the scene?
Yeah, it sounds like a real whodunit with all these missing pieces.
It does.
And we haven't even gotten to the surveillance footage yet.
Exactly.
It's a lot to take in, and the legal stakes are high.
Yeah.
If convicted, Rocky was looking at a potential sentence of up to 24 years.
Wow.
It just goes to show how even a momentary lapse in judgment
Yeah,
can have serious consequences.
absolutely.
Before we get into the verdict, if you're finding this deep dive as interesting as we are,
Yes,
hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more.
definitely.
We've got plenty more twists and turns coming up.
For sure.
What's interesting about this is that the defense claims Relly had motives
Right.
beyond just claiming assault.
Yeah.
They brought up jealousy and the potential for Relly to be seeking some kind of financial gain by accusing Rocky.
Uh-huh.
Hold on, so they're suggesting Relly might have been looking for a payout.
Hmm.
Is that a common tactic in these kinds of cases?
It is, yeah. It often boils down to credibility, right?
Right.
Lawyers trying to poke holes in the accuser's story,
Yeah.
raising doubts about their motives.
Mhm.
The defense is basically saying, don't just take Relly's word for it. Consider why he might be making these accusations.
Yeah.
It's a classic strategy to introduce that seed of doubt.
Wow, this whole thing feels like something straight out of a legal drama
Yeah.
with all the twists and turns.
It really does.
But before we dive into the verdict,
Yeah.
let's take a step back and try to unpack some of the legal complexities here.
Okay.
What are some of the key things the jury would have had to consider?
Well, they'd be looking at the burden of proof. That's huge in any legal case.
Right.
The prosecution has to prove,
Yeah.
beyond a reasonable doubt, that Rocky did commit felony assault.
Okay.
It's not just about whether a shot was fired, but also intent.
Right.
Did Rocky intend to harm Relly when that alleged shot happened?
That's a tricky thing to determine, intent.
It is.
Especially when you've got these conflicting stories and not a lot of hard evidence.
Right.
Like the surveillance footage didn't capture everything. Right?
Exactly. And that makes it even harder for the jury to piece together what actually occurred.
Right.
They're left weighing the credibility of different people's accounts,
Yeah.
trying to figure out who's telling the truth, or at least the closest version of it.
It's like a puzzle with some pieces missing. And then there's that whole thing about the gun, or lack of a gun, I guess.
Right. The fact that no gun was recovered definitely complicates things.
Yeah.
The defense argument hinges on the idea that Rocky only had that starter pistol,
Okay.
the kind that fires blanks, but without the actual weapon to examine.
Uh-huh.
The jury has to rely on testimony and conjecture.
And how much weight does testimony really hold up in court?
Yeah, that's a good question.
I mean, we all know people can misremember things.
Right.
Or even be influenced by their own biases.
That's a really important point.
Yeah.
Eyewitness testimony can be powerful,
Right.
but it's also notoriously unreliable.
Yeah.
There have been tons of studies showing how easily memories can be distorted,
Wow.
especially in stressful situations. And
Yeah.
when you factor in the potential for personal grudges or loyalty
Yeah.
within a group like the ASAP mob.
Yeah. It makes you wonder how much of this whole thing is about truth
Absolutely.
and how much is about perception, reputation, maybe even trying to protect our own image.
Absolutely. And that's where the public opinion piece comes into play.
Right.
Rocky is a high-profile celebrity
Yeah.
married to Rihanna.
Uh-huh.
This case generated a ton of media coverage.
For sure.
And with social media, everyone has an opinion.
Right.
You have to wonder, did any of that outside noise seep into the courtroom?
That's a scary thought.
It is.
It's like the court of public opinion versus the actual legal court.
Exactly.
And speaking of Rihanna, she was seen at the courthouse several times, even with their young son.
Right.
I mean, plural sons.
Oh, sons, yeah.
Right.
That image is powerful, right?
Yeah.
It humanizes the situation, reminds everyone that there are real people with real lives being impacted by this legal battle.
Yeah.
It's not just a celebrity gossip story.
And it also speaks to the pressure on Rocky.
Yeah.
I mean, not only is he facing potential prison time,
Right.
but he's also got his family, his career, his whole legacy on the line.
It's a reminder that even for celebrities, the law applies.
Right.
And the consequences can be just as devastating,
Yeah.
if not more so, because of the public scrutiny.
So let's circle back to the jury and what they were tasked with deciding.
Okay.
We've talked about burden of proof, conflicting accounts, missing evidence, and the role of public opinion.
Right.
It's a lot to unpack.
It is, and they had to sift through all of that to reach a verdict.
Right.
Remember, they're not just deciding on a simple yes or no,
Right.
guilty or not guilty. They're considering different degrees of charges, trying to determine what level of culpability, if any, Rocky had in this whole situation.
Before we reveal what they decided,
Yeah.
I have to say, if you're as captivated by this deep dive as I am, hit that subscribe button.
For sure.
We're getting to the heart of this case.
Yeah.
And trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've laid out all the complexities of this case, the he said, she said testimonies, the missing evidence, and the weight of public opinion hanging over everything. What did the jury decide?
Well, remember how we talked about different degrees of charges?
Yeah.
The jury had to consider if Rocky was guilty of assault with a semi-automatic firearm,
Right.
which carries a heavy sentence, or if there were lesser charges that might apply,
Yeah.
given the lack of a recovered weapon. It
Right.
wasn't just a black and white decision.
So what did they land on?
Yeah.
Don't leave us hanging.
The jury ultimately found ASAP Rocky not guilty
Wow.
of the 2 felony counts of assault with a semi-automatic firearm.
Not guilty.
Yeah,
That's a huge decision.
it is.
Considering the potential sentence he was facing, it must have been a massive relief for Rocky and his family.
Absolutely. But it also raises questions about how the jury weighed the evidence,
Right.
especially with those conflicting testimonies.
Yeah.
It makes you think about what convinced them that there was reasonable doubt about Rocky's intent to cause harm.
Right. And how much of that doubt stemmed from the lack of a recovered weapon?
Hmm.
Or from the defense's strategy of portraying Relly as someone with ulterior motives?
Exactly.
It's impossible to know for sure what went on in that jury deliberation room.
And that's part of what makes this case so fascinating.
Yeah.
It's a glimpse into the often opaque workings of the legal system.
Right.
We get to see the evidence presented, hear the arguments from both sides.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, the jury's decision-making process remains a bit of a mystery.
It's a reminder that justice isn't always about finding the absolute truth,
Right.
but about weighing probabilities, assessing credibility,
Yeah.
and making judgments based on the information available.
And sometimes even with all the evidence and legal arguments,
Yeah.
there's still room for ambiguity and unanswered questions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So where does this leave us?
What?
ASAP Rocky's a free man. But the shadow of this case and the questions surrounding it will likely linger for some time.
It also highlights how celebrity and public opinion can impact legal proceedings. It's hard to ignore the fact that Rocky's fame and relationship with Rihanna were part of the narrative surrounding this case.
It makes you wonder if this had been a case involving two unknown individuals.
Yeah.
Would the outcome have been the same?
Right.
Would the media attention have been so intense?
It's hard to say.
Would the public have been so invested?
Those are thought-provoking questions.
Right.
And ones that go beyond the specifics of this case.
Yeah.
It's about the intersection of celebrity justice and the power of public perception.
Well, we've certainly unpacked a lot today. Conflicting accounts, missing evidence, legal strategy, public opinion.
A lot.
And ultimately, a verdict that leaves us with more questions than answers.
It really does.
If you found this deep dive insightful,
Yeah.
be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel
For sure.
for more in-depth explorations of current events.
Absolutely.
We're here to help you cut through the noise and get to the heart of the matter.
And remember, it's not just about listening to our analysis. We encourage you to do your own research, explore different perspectives, and form your own conclusions.
Yes.
Critical thinking is more important now than ever.
Absolutely. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed,
Yeah.
and keep diving deep.